Yamato was the last samurai of the Japanese fleet. She was the biggest battleship in the world and also had the largest main battery guns, impenetrable armor, and an elite team in charge of her. In the spring of 1945, Yamato engaged in a battle that would determine Japan's destiny. The operation was codenamed Tengo, and it's remembered as Yamato's final mission.
The story of Yamato is popular in Japan and beyond its borders. She often appears in Japanese popular culture, anime and manga, military moe, and video games. She even features in several full-length movies and sci-fi works as a space battleship armed with missiles, laser guns, and a hugely powerful energy cannon, serving as the supreme flagship of the Fleet of Fog.
It was only after World War II that Yamato became internationally known. In 1937, her mere existence was deemed top secret. The dry dock in the city where she was built, Kure, was completely concealed by sisal mats, and every worker underwent special checks when entering or exiting. Taking photographs and recording film were strictly prohibited too, so only a limited number of photos of Yamato exist, mostly taken by reconnaissance aircraft of rival nations. The Yamato Museum in Kure is home to the best depiction of this battleship in the form of a 1:10 scale model. Such strict secrecy ensured that Yamato's characteristics and, importantly, her main battery gun caliber remained unknown to U.S. intelligence until the end of the war. The Americans assumed it was 406 millimeters and designed a ship to counter her, the Iowa-class super battleships. They were quite dismayed when they discovered the actual size of Yamato's guns was 460 millimeters.
You might think that the 5-centimeter difference between 406 and 460 millimeters isn't that vast, but if we consider a 2-meter-long armor-piercing shell with all of its explosives and metal parts, the weight difference between these calibers amounts to a whopping 200 kilograms. 9 shells would add about 2 tons of deadly weight, and only a truly huge ship can house such massive guns. For her enemies, Battleship Yamato is a giant tanuki, a character from Japanese folklore, with high-caliber guns.
The Americans were limited by the dimensions of the Panama Canal when designing their battleships because they had to be able to pass through this important waterway. The Japanese, by contrast, were free to build colossal ships and heavily arm them. And they really went to town with Yamato's design. They set out to build a vast battleship that could outmatch all existing and future ships.
And Yamato was truly massive. Only Godzilla could possibly match her size.
Yamato would have cost $8 billion in today's prices. She was an incredibly costly endeavor for Japan, comparable to a modern space program. This was primarily because of a severe shortage of steel in Japan. It had to be imported, and overseas purchases posed significant expenses for a small country. Japan initially planned to build a total of 4 Yamato-class ships, but only the lead ship and her sister ship, Musashi, eventually left the shipyards.
A third Yamato-class ship, Shinano, was in the works, but Japan changed her design in the summer of 1942 when she was half-built. She was converted into an aircraft carrier, a ship type that was gaining greater significance at the time, but that's a different story.
Yamato was commissioned in 1941, but Japan had no intention of sending its best ships straight into action. Neither Yamato nor Musashi participated in major battles in the Pacific Ocean. Yamato was the flagship of the Japanese combined fleet, but in her first battle, the Battle of Midway, she stayed far from the fight. The Japanese desired a massive general engagement, a major gunnery battle in which their gargantuan battleships could flex their artillery muscles.
This tactic had previously proved successful. Remember the Battle of Tsushima? It was fought in 1905. The Japanese engaged the Russian fleet in a direct confrontation, ultimately sinking 21 ships and suffering only 3 losses. The samurai really taught the Russian knights a lesson, but 40 years had passed since then.
While the Japanese admirals were waiting for an optimal engagement, the balance of power in the Pacific shifted. Aircraft carriers became key players. Admiral Yamato had warned of such a possibility even before the war, saying, "Battleships will be as useful to Japan as a samurai sword." However, impressed by the mighty naval giant, his compatriots turned a deaf ear to his intuition. Nevertheless, his words proved true in the autumn of 1944 during the Battle of the Philippines. Considered by many historians to be the decisive battle in the Pacific, the Japanese faced air raids instead of artillery duels, and that came as an unpleasant surprise. Yamato unleashed her full firepower, but her heavy main battery shells overpenetrated the American hulls and exploded far beyond without inflicting damage. By contrast, the American aircraft-dropped bombs and torpedoes proved to be extremely effective, sinking Yamato's sister ship Musashi during the Battle of the Sibuyan Sea. Those two battles were essentially the general engagement the Japanese High Command had been seeking, and they ultimately lost.
At the time, there was a saying that the three most useless things in the world were China's Great Wall, Egypt's pyramids, and Battleship Yamato.
The mighty battleship's air defenses couldn't counter sustained air attacks. Her 127mm AA guns aimed sluggishly and didn't even meet the already slow declared firing rate of 14 rounds per minute if the elevation was high or low. Her 25mm guns were designed to repel aircraft at close range, but they didn't pose any real threat to aircraft that flew into gaps in her defenses. Her AA guns also lacked a fire control system and had to be manually aimed.
The pride of the Japanese fleet proved no match for the challenge posed by waves of enemy aircraft attacking in great numbers. But the way of the samurai means emerging victorious or falling with honor. The end was drawing near, and the American fleet was approaching Okinawa, the last line of Japanese defense.
Faith in Yamato was almost religious, and on April 6, 1945, she entered into battle with resolute duty. The operation was codenamed Tengo, and it's remembered as Yamato's final mission. The Americans, for their part, couldn't miss their chance to destroy the symbol of Japan's naval power. To intercept Yamato, the United States sent Task Force 58. More than 300 aircraft took off in waves from 5 heavy and 4 light aircraft carriers, positioned about 555 kilometers away from Yamato. Yamato's crew couldn't spot the enemy ships, even with high-powered binoculars. Firing all her guns, the battleship struggled to evade the shower of bombs that the American aircraft were raining down on her. 6 direct hits and 5 torpedoes rendered Yamato immobilized. In a few minutes, she started listing to port, and then a monstrous explosion erupted. Her main battery magazines had detonated. Together with the ship, 3,000 crew members were lost, including the commanders of the force and the ship. Yamato was born to fight, and retreating would have been considered a violation of all Japanese military traditions.
The Japanese don't regard the loss of Yamato as pointless. For them, she's a symbol of honor, bravery, duty, and dignity that has helped the nation move past their defeat in World War II and find new meaning in it. Japanese popular culture has embraced the story of Yamato as the basis for a true samurai epic. She sailed out on a lonely mission with true bravery and became an icon of naval grandeur. This is one path to becoming legendary, regardless of the fate that history casts in time.